Hello again, students. We're going to cover the last section of Chapter 1. This lecture will be called Lecture 1.4, and it's entitled Collecting Data to Understand Causality. There's a lot that could be said on this topic that I'm about to cover, but our time limits us as what we could do here in this particular class, but the things that will be talked about here are important for you to understand, at least how a study might be designed and what might consist of if we're going to establish causality. Okay, and we'll talk about what we mean by that, and we're going to talk about observational studies and experiments as the primary mechanisms for doing data collection and analysis, but only the experiment is the one that allows you to establish causality. So causality basically means when you run a controlled experiment, then we are going to do something. We're going to have a treatment variable. Sometimes we'll do it with multiple treatment variables. I ran a lot of experiments where I worked in DuPont where we may have had 7 or 8 different variables that we were changing for the purpose of seeing how it affected some response of interest. And that's the second thing that's shown here is the outcome or response variable. So we want to see whether or not things get better or worse or change as a result of the treatments, whatever we might do. The term treatment may sound a little funny to you. A lot of the world of experimental design came from the world of agriculture, and there a treatment would be, the way that you treat the soil, the conditions the soil was treated, whether you added fertilizer, how much sun it got, how much water it got, and they call all of those things treatments, and those words have just stuck to whatever the field might be. We use the term treatment, meaning that we're going to change something or multiple things and see what kind of impact they have. So that's the goal, is to see if the treatment variable causes a change in the outcome variable. Usually we're hoping for a positive change, of course. So here's an example, a very simple example of studying causality. If you want to know whether a certain diet aid works, you could conduct a controlled experiment. And by controlled experiment means that we're going to give the treatment variable to one group, and then another group would have would not get the treatment, and we would compare those and see if there was a difference in the weight loss outcomes. Okay, and that's a very easy thing to measure. So the group that receives the treatment is called the treatment group, and in this case there's just one treatment variable, and the control group would be the ones that don't receive the treatment, or in some cases it might be that we put a group together that does not have the characteristic that we're interested in studying. You got to be a little careful about that, because that doesn't necessarily mean we're running a controlled experiment. So that statement might be a little bit off target here when it says has the characteristic or does not. We have to be careful, because that might not necessarily be an experiment in that case. So just kind of keep that in mind. We're trying to set up an experiment so we can see whether or not what we changed, right, purposely has an impact on an output variable of interest. So good practices in trying to establish causality is, first of all, in a controlled experiment, we usually assign the subjects to the treatment or the control group randomly. And that's important, because we don't want to introduce any bias into the experiment, and that this has actually happened. There have been many documented cases where there was bias applied in medical studies, for example, where the people that were really sick got one treatment and the people that weren't as sick got another, and then at the end they say, well, the treatment worked. Well, that probably worked because you gave the people that weren't as sick a different treatment, and so that doesn't work. So the random assignment is part of the important methodology here that we use in the experimentation. Alright, so that will eliminate bias. Another thing that is very often done, particularly in medical studies, is placebos. A placebo is a harmless pill. Might look like everyone's getting the same treatment. They're all getting a pill, but half of the pills actually have the drug of interest in it, and the others don't have anything. or they might have sugar or something that's not going to have an impact on it and on the disease that they're trying to treat. And so sometimes you get what's called a placebo effect, meaning that you're told you're receiving the treatment when in fact you're not, and as a result of that, just thinking that you're getting a treatment can sometimes make things better. That's actually been proven to be a very powerful effect. So that's why we, in medical studies particularly, they often have a placebo as part of the study. There's a there is a video presentation called the placebo effect. You'll find it, you can link to it right here from this PowerPoint presentation, but there's also a link to it on Canvas in Chapter 1 near the bottom there. One other thing about good practices in studying causality is a blind type of study. So somebody independent from the researchers actually assigns the subjects to the treatment groups. And the subjects themselves don't know if they're getting the treatment or not. They basically, if you're told you get a pill, you don't get or you get a pill, everybody thinks they're getting a pill, but only half of them are actually getting the treatment, and the other half are getting the placebo. And a double-blind treatment, the researchers don't even know who's got the treatment and which ones are not, and that's kind of an important methodology just used in a lot of medical drug treatment type of studies. I'm going to show you an example of a well-designed experiment that was designed to try to establish cause and effect. And so the hypothesis here was whether chest pain can be relieved by drilling holes in the heart. That sounds like kind of a funny thing. Well, these are very tiny holes that are drilled using a laser procedure. They're very small, and over time, some doctors who adopted this technique found that their patients had a lasting and dramatic decrease in their chest pain symptoms. So the researchers started to wonder, is that because it's due to the procedure itself, or is it some kind of placebo effect? So they did a research project at Lenox Hill Hospital in New York City to try to study this particular issue. And what they did in this study, they took a laser treatment, and it was applied using a fairly non-invasive procedure, and a group of 288 volunteers that had fairly severe pain were randomly assigned to get the laser or not. So everybody had something done to them that looked like they were getting the procedure. Patients were sedated, but they were awake. They could hear the doctors discuss the laser process. Each patient thought they were receiving the treatment, the laser treatment, but only half of them received it in actuality. So the way this thing was designed, they have patients, that's the population, is people with chest pain, and they had a sample of 298 patients. They were randomly assigned to one of two groups. One got the treatment, which is laser holes in the heart. The other got no holes in the heart. We call that treatment 2, or that's really a control group. They were getting a placebo. So they had everything treatment 1 did, but they didn't get the holes in the heart. So now we're going to look and see whose pain was relieved, and see if we can establish a cause and effect relationship between that treatment and the pain relief. So it turns out the laser patients did very well. In other words, it appeared that the procedure worked, but to everyone's surprise, the placebo group showed more improvement in pain relief than the actual treatment group. So they're still studying the effects of this, but it does appear that in this particular case, the placebo effect was very strong, and maybe that's the reason why it led to so much pain relief among heart patients. So they're still working on that particular study and doing more research, but it's a very well-designed study as the way that it's described here, and would have led to cause and effect had they gotten a different result. Other types of studies, the most common one is shown here as observational studies. Observational studies are where subjects fall into groups, if you will, the groups of interest, either by their choice or someone else's choice, and it wasn't necessarily randomly assigned. And maybe not even that. Maybe there's just historical data there where people fell into groups naturally, And so we're not going to be able to establish cause and effect with that kind of a study. That doesn't mean we should do the observational studies, but you can tell an observational study by the fact that somebody is changing the treatment purposely to study the effect of that treatment. Another type of study is just anecdotal evidence. An anecdote is just a story based on somebody else's experience where they tell you, you know, I did such and such and I'm not having any health problems, or I got better, and that sort of thing. Well, that's just one story and one observation, and you probably should never establish any reliable conclusions. Now, if you hear enough stories, it might become interesting, but you're then going to have to turn around and study it further to really establish statistically that something is going on there. Okay, this concept, though, of the causality can only be shown by a well-designed experiment where you make a treatment effect. That will probably show up on the exam for coming up. You'll probably see it in the quizzes as well. So look at this. Is there a causality here? You notice there are more drownings reported at the beach when the number of ice cream sales increases. So does eating ice cream cause drownings? Well, obviously this was not a designed experiment. It's an observational study, and people have observed this, but you wouldn't necessarily do an experiment on this because you're not going to purposely drown people or put them at risk and so on. But the other part of this is it's probably not a cause and effect, right? You see there's an observation here with no assigned treatments, and there's a good chance that the drownings go up because it's the summer, and right, you're going to sell more ice cream during that time. So there's probably another variable over there that is explaining everything. So, but there are many times where you can't perform an experiment, and that's important to understand. You know, you can't assign children to be smokers in order to test that smoking causes cancer. No, that would be unethical. And we don't do things like that. We resort to observational studies for that kind of thing because there are places where design experiments don't make any sense. Occasionally you have something called the confounding variable, where something is causing an effect that you see, like the drowning. That's probably just because it's warm outside, more people are buying ice cream, and or it's a holiday, or you've got tourists coming in because it's the summer and so on. So you expect both things to happen at the same time as you get more people there. So to just kind of summarize in experiments, these are some signs that you have a well-designed experiment, have a large enough sample size to account for noise and variability. We'll talk more about that particular item later on, I believe, in class when we get to some other chapters. The assignment should be random, and there should be a control group. Often there might be a placebo, particularly if it's a medical study. And the study is blind, meaning that those subjects who received the treatment or didn't receive it don't really know which group that they're in. There's an example of this, kind of a well-designed study on research on nicotinamide. I think that's nicotinamide, and it's a form of vitamin B3, and they think it might be effective in preventing basal cell and squamous skin cancer. You can go look up that research online. It's pretty easy to find. So when you see statistics in the news where people are quoting, well, we found such and such, you should ask yourself, is this an observational study or controlled experiment? If it's a controlled experiment, did it meet the standards we're talking about on that previous slide? And was it published in a reputable place? And did they, do a long enough study to really establish what the impact was? We had some interesting things arise with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, right? Where women under 50 were experiencing clotting. It was still rare that clotting was occurring, but observationally they could see that it was happening in some women under 50, so they suspended the vaccine for a while, and now it's back again under the understanding that it's very rare, and it's basically only women under 50. So if you're a woman under 50 and you haven't had a vaccine yet, probably the best thing is to get a different vaccine besides the Johnson & Johnson. Okay, we've come to the end of this chapter. Just wanted to remind you, these are the things we propose to study in this chapter, and if you have a grasp of these items on this final chart, populations and samples, types of data, numeric and categorical, tabular summaries, and observational versus controlled experiments. You have captured what I need you most to learn from this chapter. Thank you.